Well, hello, happy Wednesday, everybody. It's Doug, your wedding officiant, and your host for Engagement tonight. Engagement, a place where we chit chat about things that we find engaging. The dictionary says engagement is to bring together conversation, have dialogue, and that's exactly what I like to do because I am a curious wedding officiant who likes to have dialogue, who likes to talk to people. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Engagement. So I'm really excited. We've gone through a few seasons now. This is now season 3. Who would think it, right? Season 3, where we're talking about men's health. First, we started talking about what I love, which are weddings, and we did a master series on weddings and talked to great professionals about what you need to do, or what you need to have, or what's out there in the way of weddings and wedding vendors. And that was a great fun. And you can always, rewatch that and share it with your friends and, maybe people that are newly engaged through YouTube. And then we sort of rolled into phenomenal females. I was very, very fortunate, am very fortunate to have been, to be mentored by some phenomenal females, some great matriarchs in my family. So we went into a phenomenal female series. We talked to some great female entrepreneurs and some just really great women in the area that I know that are within arm's length of me. And then we rolled into summertime, where, of course, I made the famous proclamation, as my friends remind me every day, about, let's make this summer the absolute best summer we can, because let's face it, COVID's not been fun, and we want to have some fun. It's summertime, and before you know it, it's going to be wintertime and snow is going to be blowing and winter blues and all those things that follow along with that. But let's have the best summer we could. So we did some fun summer things. We did some sippy sippies. We sipped with Susan. We sipped with Susan's mom. We explored. We had a lot of fun. We talked about baseball. We had Fergie Jenkins in. And then we transitioned to season 3. A little more hard hitting, maybe a little deeper. There's more to me than just shits and giggles. So we're talking a little bit about men's health, and we've dedicated this season 3, to men's health, men's habits, and men's humor. So I'm really excited today to have a nutritionist on. His name is Jay Hallatt, and Jay is a phenomenal nutritionist, a great guy. Easy to talk to. He become your best friend and your best confidant, which is very important when you're talking about eating habits or bad nutrition. So we've reached out to Jay, and he's graciously come along to talk about nourishment for men. So Jay, welcome aboard.
Hey Doug, thanks for having me.
Thank you. How's it going?
Very good, very good. How about yourself?
Very good. It is Wednesday. I'm I always look forward to Wednesday mornings. I get up with a little spring in my step because I'm going to talk to someone that's exciting or phenomenal, someone that's going to either, make me laugh or maybe make me cry.
I hope I don't make you cry. Maybe make you laugh.
Please don't.
Maybe educate you a little bit. But I hope one day maybe we can have some sips together there too.
Absolutely. So nutrition for men, or nourishing men, and that's something that that I really wanted to talk about. I myself, as a young boy, those that knew me back in the little town I grew up, I was the size of a twig. I was very, very thin. I could eat anything. I remember eating 3 plates, Thanksgiving dinner, 3 turkey dinners in a row, 3 plates, and then having dessert. And I was so small, and metabolism, she's a fickle woman, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
And I would just burn it off, right? And I think I'm pretty active still at my age. I get about anywhere between 5 and 10K in a day. That's in good. Steps and activity, and just keep moving and grooving, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, metabolism says, hey, let's just sort of hang on to this. And nutrition is really important. And I know that it's not necessarily the activity I'm getting. The activity is doing its thing, but it's what I'm putting in my mouth. It's what I put in my face, right, that is doing the damage. So I wanted to bring you on just because I know that you can maybe help demystify it for us.
I will do my best, the things are with the nutrition, which me as a nutritionist, I find a little challenging, is that the research is always changing. Things are it's a very controversial world. So you see stuff on both sides that are telling you that this is the best or this is the best. So it's really hard to navigate which is the best and what you should be listening to and what you should be following, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that today I can kind of shed some light on the whole topic itself. But I know, like, if sounds like if you and I both the same, we do like our food and we like to eat a lot, and that's doing that from a young age kind of instills those habits and makes it a little bit difficult to get out of that as we get older, right? So
subtle shifts. So I'm not a mechanic. I might on an old car know where the carburetor is.
More than I do, Doug. More than I do.
Well, good. Look at me. I'm ahead of you. But it's kind of like an engine, right? Your body is an engine,
100%.
and it's to have that right balance of we'll call it fuel, and definitely, to get the right balance so that it makes you hum along, and that's where you can help to really demystify that, because we don't always know how many carbs we should have in our body, or how many how much protein we should be consuming, and how important sleep is, and water, and etc. Right?
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that people, especially if they say you're on like this fat loss journey, and you don't really, you kind of get away from that mindset of using food as fuel, because that's really what it is, right? So the nice thing about food is there's so many things you can do with food. You can still make it absolutely phenomenal and delicious and enjoyable, but getting to that point of kind of demonizing foods, or really thinking foods are like really good or really bad, or I shouldn't eat this, I shouldn't eat that, it kind of creates this unhealthy relationship with food potentially. So knowing that food is fuel and food can be your ally is very important to the whole process of whatever journey you may be on, whether it's fat loss, muscle gain, whatever that is, or just trying to be healthier in general, right? So
I think that's a great segue to something that just popped in my head. And who was your first concert you went to? Now, just humor me for a second there. Who was your first concert you went to?
My first concert. So it's probably bands that you guys have no idea who I'm talking about, because they were heavy metal bands. This is actually a band called Unearth. They're, they're quite heavy. This was at the Embassy in London. So it was a very small show. After that whole experience kind of blew my mind, going to this high energy, crazy audience, crazy band, going nuts, to get kicked in the head as some guy stage diving beside me. But yeah, that was my first concert. And after that, I was just on a just going after concert as many as we could.
So my first concert was actually Boy George.
Okay, quite a different experience.
Hopped on a bus with my then girlfriend, now wife. Went to Michigan to a concert, and we saw Boy George. Fast forward to a number of years ago, Boy George actually was quite heavy, and he was on TV, and his words were that he had to change his relationship with food.
Yes.
One of the most profound things I've ever heard when it comes to looking at your journey, looking at your behaviors and the way you eat. And every once in a while, when I'm making, biscuits or good Southern food, I think I probably should look at changing my relationship with food. It doesn't mean that you stop that relationship.
No,
just maybe you don't visit as often.
Right. Yes.
So,
that is it. That is like, you hear about so many eating disorders in terms of, say, anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, whatever that may be, but understanding and having a very good relationship with food is going to be one of the biggest breakthroughs you can have on your actual journey of being healthier. Right. It is, it's so important to be able to understand how your body operates, how your body works, what these foods do to your body. So being able to know what is going to optimize your function, and allowing yourself to still enjoy these great foods, because I'm a big proponent of just loving life and enjoying these things. And one of my favorite things to do is go out and eat and experiment with new foods and try new foods, and just have that whole social aspect of dining and having a few drinks, whatever that is. So creating that nice healthy relationship, that nice balancing act between everything is so important to be able to do things sustainable. Because the big
It
thing
is.
about is anything with, whether it's exercise or nutrition, having a sustainable approach, doing this, being able to do this for the long term is what's going to give you the most satisfactory results in the end.
Okay. I agree with that. And I want to come back to that. Actually, I think it's a really great point. But I want to ask a couple of sort of surface questions first, so that people understand a little more about Jay here.
Okay.
So, how long have you been a trainer / nutritionist? Because you also train people as well as
yeah. Like training, I've done since about 2010. I've worked out. I've been pretty active my whole life through skateboarding and martial arts. But I do enjoy training and teaching and educating people in that aspect. And then after so many years of training, I was kind of looking into how I could kind of, like I did some other nutrition courses while I was as a trainer, but I kind of wanted to look into doing some stuff online and kind of growing my whole knowledge base. I'm just a constant student, constant learner. So I decided to go to the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, and I graduated in 2018. So since then, I have done some nutrition work, but I would still put myself as pretty much balanced between a trainer and a nutritionist overall.
Well, they go hand in hand.
Yes.
So Cloudy actually asked me to ask you about your skateboard background. I had no idea that you were a boarder.
Skateboarding is I started when I was 9, so it's been 26 years of that for me, and that's been a huge part of my life growing up. That was what I dedicated from 9 until probably 15 years old. That was my main priority every day, was to get as much skateboarding as I could. I was very fortunate to have a really good skate team here in Chatham with the skate shop owner and all that he did all my filming. He took me on trips. He would drive me all over the place, all over the province, into the States. He would do all my filming. He got me all my sponsors. So I was very thankful for that, very fortunate for that. And I still skateboard today. Over the years, you kind of dabble in and out, do a little bit less some years, a little bit more other years. But when I was in 2015, when I moved out to BC, I didn't know anyone out there. So I was going to the skate park by myself, met a bunch of guys there, and kind of got back in touch with my love of skateboarding again. So since 2015, I've been skateboarding pretty regularly, as much as my body lets me do it. But I still am out. Now we have a new skate shop here in Chatham opened up. So I'm we do some lessons with those, got some kids I'm teaching. So we're trying to build up that community again. But yeah, that's definitely been a huge part of my life for sure.
Good. I love to see people that are building communities, because that's where it's at. That's what it's all about. I mean,
for sure.
Without community, you are very much in a vacuum, and that community can be whatever you want it to be. It can be
doesn't matter what it is,
community
right?
of family, community of friends, people that share like minds, and good for you. Congratulations. I would assume a lot of broken bits and pieces, right?
Thankfully, I've never actually broken anything.
Nice.
I know I've had at least one concussion. I've injured myself many times, but nothing. I've never broken a bone. Somehow.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So, and then you obviously found this profession as a trainer and nutritionist at 360, Performance 360. So, you train people there. You sit with them. You look at their eating habits, and I've done the journals where you write down everything that you're consuming.
Quite annoying, quite tough.
It is, and I remember doing it for a trainer. Her name was Iris, and I don't know if in Chatham, Kent or not.
Yeah.
So she didn't know me. I didn't know her. She said, like, write everything you put in your mouth down. I was going through a martini phase at that point.
So I just said martini, martini, martini.
3 olives, 3 olives, 3 olives.
Hey, I don't blame
you. Like a good martini. And there are calories in cocktails, but again, it's that finding the fuel, finding the balance. So
yes.
What's your philosophy when it comes to men's nutrition, if you have one at all? Like, where do they begin if they have not done anything? Like, what would you suggest they do?
Well, I know this whole series, this season for you is about men's health. But when I talk to a client, regardless of their gender, I kind of get down. It really comes down to their individual needs, and kind of what they're willing and how kind of committed they are and what they're willing to do in terms of make sacrifice, whatever it is, right? Because there is trainers, nutritionists out there that, make it kind of tough on the client to say, this is what you have to do, and they're not really working with you. Whereas I want to be able to work with you to give you the best chance for success, right? Because if, in my experience, right, if I work with somebody and say, okay, I'm going to give you this very, very strict, detailed meal plan, generally they might stick with that for a little bit, but it's really tough to kind of sustain that, right? So when it comes to like specifically for men, in a difference between men and women, we all human beings we're pretty genetically similar. So we don't need that many different things overall in terms of men and women. Generally with men, right, we are a larger size, we carry a little bit more muscle mass. So that means that we have to consume a higher amount of calories, and we have to generally consume a little bit more protein because of the amount of lean tissue we have on us. Mm-hmm. Other than that, like as a holistic nutritionist, because that's what my designation would be, a registered holistic nutritionist coming from the CSNN. So the way we kind of operate was I give you my forms, we kind of find out what body systems are kind of imbalanced, and that's how we kind of program and make our recommendations to you. So again, it really is very individualized. That's the whole thing with nutrition. It really is individualized. But when it comes to men, generally, it is, like I said, a little bit higher calories overall, and then a little bit more protein intake overall. And when I am talking to men, and what I was kind of looking into and trying to prepare for you today, Doug, was just making sure, because a lot of men generally, right, they tend to have a question about how to keep their testosterone levels up, right? Because as we get older, we know that our testosterone levels just decline every decade, every year, really. And then every decade, approximately 10%-ish, right? So from the age of 20 and so on. And then even within that those numbers they vary quite a bit, right? Because there has been studies have shown that some guys, in their 90s, that they have the testosterone levels of a 20-year-old. So
I want that.
Yeah, I know. You wish, right? But it's
I want that.
You just never know. Yeah, it's really, really, really tough. So there is some things that you can try to do to promote that, but even that necessarily it goes so much more beyond just nutrition. It ends up going into, there's exercise protocols that you can do to kind of maximize that. There is your stress levels, your cortisol levels, which kind of affect that, as well as your sleep patterns. So this combination of nutrition and exercise and stress management and sleep, those are all the things that really help optimize your hormone levels. So that is something I always touch on because, again, as a holistic nutritionist, we're not just talking about one thing specifically in terms of nutrition or exercise. We're talking kind of about everything as a unit, right? The whole body. So mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever you want to say, but we are thinking about all those things together to optimize your health overall. So that is my approach. So when anyone's really talking to me about one thing specifically, I can't really talk about just one without mentioning some of the other aspects of your overall health as well. So
I love that you mentioned all of the other aspects of wellness.
Yes,
because your physical, your mental, your spiritual are all very important, and
very much so.
Again, it's a balancing act, and it's a hard thing to balance. Some people do it effortlessly, and they just don't even think about it. They've always done it.
Just naturally happens, right?
They just naturally happen, and then some of us, need
struggle. It's constantly like,
exactly.
Yes. And the thing is, right, like balance is, it's one of those things where it's very few people, like you said, are constantly kind of in that balance, right? Everyone, it's always a balancing act. So there's going to be those days, months, weeks, years, whatever it is, where you're teetering way off here. And then there's other times where you're going to be a bit more balanced out, and then you're going to the opposite side. So as long as you are just putting in the effort as best you can on that daily basis, then I try to always tell people not to let this whole wellness journey become an extra stressor, right? We have so many other stressors involved with our lives, whether it's, work, financial, like relationship, whatever it is. We don't need to add an extra one in. We just try to think, do what we can at in that moment as best as we can, and don't necessarily really beat ourselves up so much about what's happened in the past, what we just didn't do. Let's think, okay, well, the next opportunity we have, we can try to improve on that.
It's wise. The balance is they say the battle is real. The balance is real. So
for sure, man.
I recently actually had a consultation with a nutritionist who reached out to me, a personal trainer, talking about, you know, what I should do. And they went through the whole sort of like, well, what do you eat? And I explained that, you know, I come from the South, South Chatham. And I, you know, I typically like, you know, more of the Southern palate and the new barbecue and, you know, all of the things that are not good for you, like butter. But I believe I'd rather believe in the farmer than the chemist when it comes to.
Well, I was gonna say butter is overall. So if there's anybody out there listening right now and you're still eating margarine, I urge you very, very, very much so to switch over to butter. You know, there's a big marketing push behind the margarine, but butter is really much more healthy for you overall. It does have more nutrients in it. You get this effect of being able to convert, you know, these you know, saturated bad fats into this butyric acid that your body can actually utilize and kind of metabolize much better than, whereas margarine is basically just this synthesized, processed, I don't want to say chemical necessarily, but our bodies don't necessarily know what to do with it so much. So if you are eating butter, continue to do so. If you're eating margarine, I would suggest you to switch to butter, in my opinion.
Jay, you my people.
Butter tastes 1,000 times better, so enjoy it.
Well,
enjoy
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Obviously, you don't want to be eating, you know, sticks of butter every day, but
no,
yes, use butter over margarine for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. So when it comes to all the different choices out there right now, I mean, we've heard of all kinds of diet. You can't keep up on all the different diets. I mean, whether you're paleo or you're keto, or I know, right? You know, whether you're. I mean, did you know that like even Dr. Phil has a diet? Like, did you know that
he has like his own diet, like brand?
Yeah, he came out with a diet, and I bought it.
Yeah. So what was the basis of it?
I don't know, but I actually bought it. I bought the DVD of it to listen to Phil, which I never want to hear him again. But it was I like a good Southern drawl, but it drove me nuts.
Yeah.
It was more about, I think, more mindful eating, which is a whole nother craze as well, right?
That's the thing that we try to implement as well.
And there's low carb and there's plant based, and it goes on and on. Paleo, or someone told me recently that they were, I can't think of the name, but basically they eat whatever they want, and there's a name for that.
It's
a diet.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. So
maybe it was intuitive eating. That's kind of when that's been floating around a little bit. So the intuitive eating is the, you know, you just try to use your intuition as to, okay, well, I feel like eating this, or I feel like eating this, I feel like eating this. And I think that can be beneficial for some people, as long as they're still being mindful of the choices they're making and are a little educated in terms of, you know, what their body needs in terms of nutrients. So, you know, like I consider myself to somewhat be intuitive to a degree. You know, I try to make healthy choices, but, you know, if there's times where it's like, you know what, I really want to have, let's have a cheeseburger. I really want to have pizza. I want to have a piece of cake or a cookie or whatever that is. I allow myself to do so. I don't feel guilty about it. I enjoy the heck out of it. And I think that's how everyone should be kind of trying to operate or get to that point. I get where, you know, you might have to go a little bit more strict for a longer amount of time, but always knowing that the end goal is trying to get to a point where you're still eating the foods you enjoy, but you're still putting emphasis on to having nutrient dense whole foods that are still providing your body with all the things it needs to optimize and be healthy, so that you know that you can feel their best, which means you can be your best self and you can perform the best. And if you are feeling good and you're performing well, then generally the rest of your life is going to kind of improve beyond that as well. So, you know, if you have energy and you're feeling good, in your good mood, you're more productive. So work life ends up being a little bit better. Your family life gets a little bit better. You can deal with stress a little bit better. You can sleep a little bit better. So that's this whole big cycle of providing yourself with good nutrients. It has this big positive effect that you can try to create this cycle of going, right? So that's what I always try to tell my clients, is that's what we're shooting towards eventually.
I think, being in touch with, you know, your body and how it feels is important. I know that recently I was trying I was doing the fasting, you know, the intermittent fasting. So I was not eating, you know, after supper. I was not eating until, you know, I had to in the morning, you know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
Yep.
And I'd get so hungry that I'd get hangry, which is
right.
That's real.
That's no fun. That's no fun.
No, that's no fun.
No.
And I remember going through at one of those hangry moments, driving through a drive-through to grab a burger. I won't mention the company, but they have arches, and eating it, and I felt like crap afterwards.
Yep.
I felt like crap. So fast forward a couple days, and it happened again because I'm trying to stretch out the fasting to make sure it works, and I ended up having a salad when I got really, really hungry, and I didn't feel like crap. I felt pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm there was croutons in it, and there was
dressing on it,
dressing, and but on the whole, like if you look at it as an 80-20 split, it was 80% good and 20% not so good. But it was still it was far more satisfying than the drive-through option. So but that requires preparation, being prepared.
Being prepared is one of the big challenges, especially in our day and age where generally we're so busy with family life, work life, where it's really hard to dedicate some time to preparing your meals and planning your whole grocery store visit, and knowing that your schedule and your meals kind of align, that you're not ended up just kind of in a panic and saying, oh, I have to go out and get something convenient, that you've pre-made this meal, you've packed it up, it's all ready to go for you amidst all the other craziness you have in your life. So preparing is one of the hardest things, but it is also one of the most beneficial. Generally with it's so strange how most people here, right? Like we don't prioritize ourselves so much, right? We always prioritize our family and our work lives. So we put ourselves on the back burner, and it's kind of this double-edged sword, because you feel like if you don't prioritize those things, then those will fall apart. But if you're not prioritizing yourself, then you can't give your best self to your work or to your family life. So it gets really tough to navigate, and that's where one of those conversations with my clients is really tough to get either through to them, or try to find the actual time to say, okay, we know whether it's Sunday afternoons or our Monday nights or whatever it's going to be, that is going to allow you to do that and be prepared, so that you can start to make those little bit of changes and then start to implement that and make this a regular routine, a regular habit out of yourself and your whole schedule, right? So I definitely know it is very tough, but it is absolutely beneficial to get you to your goal in terms of your overall wellness and being healthier.
Well, it's that old Boy Scout saying about always being prepared. If you have your snacks prepared and your everything clean and ready to go, grab and go, and it should be easier in theory. I mean, you can go on Pinterest or on YouTube or the TikTok and find all kinds of hacks to make sure you've got everything ready in your fridge, and it's a discipline. It's a discipline.
Oh, for sure. Right? Yep, it is. It
So,
is just being disciplined within that, like for sure, definitely. It's.
Now, do you recommend any sort of whether it's MyFitnessPal or Lose It or any of those apps that are out there to keep track of your consumption, and how do we know how much to eat?
So again, like depending on what your personal goal is. So your baseline, the first thing you should have a good understanding is of your basal metabolic rate, or your TDEE, which is your total daily energy expenditure, which just means how many calories you're burning on your own. So the difference between the two, so your basal metabolic rate would just be you wake up, you do nothing all day. You can lie in bed, you do nothing. It's basically just how many calories your body's burdened to sustain living, right? So like obviously your organ function and just being able to operate those basic functions is your basal metabolic rate. Then you have your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE, which starts to incorporate your kind of activity levels. So if you have a job that is a very demanding physically job, or you have a job that's very sedentary, working in an office and sitting in the desk all day, and then what your exercise schedule is, and kind of, then there's this also, this thermogenic effect of food, which is, how, because every time we eat, right, that starts to burn calories itself, and the different foods have a different effect on how much that tends to burn. So there's all these little variables that determine how many calories we're burning overall each day, but that is where our baseline is. So if we know what our calories are, our baseline, our maintenance calories. So if we eat the same that we're burning, then we know that we're not going to gain or lose any weight. So that is our kind of, we have to have a good understanding of that. So there's different equations you can do. There's so many things online that you can go with. If you just type in BMR calculator online, you'll get that in. It'll be very easy if you just put in like, age, height, weight, and it does a calculation for you. Now that's only an estimate. So you have to understand that this can fluctuate and vary between, a few hundred calories, give or take, but at least it gives you a baseline to kind of work with. Or you can always go to, like at our gym, we have a machine that you stand on, and it gives you this very comprehensive scan of your body in terms of measurements, and tells you what your BMR is, and it calculates what your total daily expenditure is based off your activity levels. So if you have an understanding of what you're burning each day, then depending on what your individual goal is, so if you want to gain weight or typically you want to gain muscle, right? So then we're trying to put us into a calorie surplus. So that means that we are trying to consume more calories than we're burning. And if we're doing so, we want to do that in a relatively small fashion. So, I go to a 15 to 20% surplus to try to gain muscle mass, so that we're doing it in a healthy way. We're not trying to, stuff and gorge yourself too much and have to try to make this crazy change in terms of how much food we're eating and how often we're eating. And then if we're on the opposite side of things, that we want to be in a calorie deficit, and I do the same 15 to 20%, depending on, kind of what is comfortable for you and where your calories are at in terms of how much you're burning. But again, that's on both sides. So let's just say 15 on both sides, whether you want to gain or lose. But that is your base to start off with, how much to know you're eating, right? So if you know what your goal is and you know what your calories burned is per day on average, then you know where you should be in terms of how many calories you're consuming. So you kind of want to average this out to a week. So people get really neurotic about trying to say like, hey, every day I have to make sure I'm at that 50% deficit every single day. And then they kind of get a little bit crazy about it, where again, that kind of ends up being this, like, again, a bit of an unhealthy relationship with this whole process. Because we kind of like, it's obviously gonna be challenging. There's gonna be times where we don't enjoy it at all, but overall we want to try to enjoy this and think about it as a time that we can learn and grow in terms of our knowledge and how we feel. So if we are trying to lose fat, that put us in our deficit, and again, we want to think of it as an average over the week. So that was one thing I kind of want to talk to you guys about, is over the course of 7 days, that if we have, like, to make this very realistic in terms of people, right? Especially like, for yourself and myself, Doug, who, we like to have a drink, we like to eat some food, and we might like socialize. Then if I know, okay, this Friday I have a gathering, so we're going to go to a restaurant. I'm going to have a nice meal because I'm going to enjoy it. I don't want to completely restrict myself of being at this nice restaurant where I get to indulge in a rich dinner, plus the dessert, plus some drinks. So I know that my calories are going to be way up here. So that the rest of the week, what I have to time to think of doing, okay, at the end of the week, I still want to be at that 15% deficit. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm eating slightly lower than I would normally had I not have this occasion on the Friday. Then Thursday, I could be there as well. So that on Friday, I'm going to eat that normal meal. I'm going to enjoy it, not feel guilty about it. Just really embrace the whole experience. And then Saturday and Sunday, kind of based off of what I had on that Friday, then be able to finish off my week, so that at the end of the whole week, so let's just say for numbers, I was at 1,500 the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, I was at like 4,000. And then on the Saturday, Sunday, I had to go back down to like, let's say 15 and then 1,800 to balance out my overall week, so that I still ended up at my 15% deficit at the end of the week. Then that is, if we can sustain that over X amount of weeks, X amount of months, then we'll still be on a journey of losing this fat in a healthy manner, but we don't necessarily have to give up everything and create this crazy type of restriction on ourselves overall. So that to me is kind of how I like to approach things. I think it's realistic for most people, because, if I've told people before, say, hey, you know what, you can only have your chicken and broccoli and your eggs and this and that, whatever it is, and your rice and your beans, whatever it is, it's really hard to sustain that. And allowing people to know that, okay, as long as you start to have a good understanding of how this kind of works, then you can start to incorporate these things and have a little bit of flexibility and lenience in terms of what you're eating, when you're eating, and how you kind of live your life, especially if you like to socialize. If you're someone who doesn't really do much and you're more of an introverted person who just kind of stays home and does your own thing, it's a lot different than someone who is coming from 10 years of out there partying and being the weekend warrior, right? So, as I said, I have to work with that client, but understanding of how our overall calories work. And if you return in terms of talking about going to what type of diet, would be recommended or what would be best for you, I always say whatever is sustainable for you. So whether that is a paleo Mediterranean, a keto, carnivore, plant-based, whatever it is, if you feel like you can do that for the rest of your life and it feels good for you and it makes you feel good, that's going to be your first choice. Then have an understanding that whichever one you decide, if you have your baseline of your calories in versus calories out, you will generally lose your weight or gain your weight. So the studies have shown that it doesn't matter where it comes from. You can do low carb, high carb. It didn't matter in the studies. As long as they're in that deficit, they still all lost about the same amount of weight. So that's why I say whatever makes you feel good, whatever works best for you, that is what is going to, what I would recommend to you in terms of this long-term sustainable approach.
Mm-hmm. So the measurements are really important, and yes. I don't want to negate that. I mean, I've gone in and had them done. They are scary to have done.
Yep.
I stood on that turntable.
Yeah.
And I'll paint you the picture of what we got back. Just picture the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying. And then when I did finish the program with you guys, and we did the ride again on the spin table, there was a difference in the overlay between before and after. Just a slimmer Michelin Man. But it's those measurements, those are really important and they're really scary. And I remember when I did it, they said, well, you can just save this file if you want. I'm like, I don't want to save this file. I'm going to delete this.
Yeah.
Is this on the interweb?
Yeah, get rid of that.
But that's really important. So whether you do that or whether you use, a tracking app of your, from the App Store, as long as you're going in the right direction. So right. People can come in and get that done, right?
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Yep. Yeah. I'm sorry. I completely forgot about your question in terms of what apps.
That's okay.
I've used MyFitnessPal a little bit. The one thing that I found as a nutrition that was a little annoying to me was say you're selecting your food, your ingredient, or whatever that is, then I was finding, because I was trying to make a whole calorie guide for my clients, and I'd find that, okay, you could take say 100 grams of nuts or say almonds, whatever it is, and you have different options you can choose from. And then some would say, 100 grams is X amount of calories, and another one say 100 grams is a different amount of calories. So it was it was confusing. It was a little bit annoying for me. That's one downfall to an app like that, where you can, there's so many people can input information, so it's hard to find exactly what works best. And the thing is with some of those apps, where what they tend to do is they tend to overestimate the amount you're burning, and then they tend to underestimate the amount you're consuming. So you might think you're eating 2,000 calories, and it's telling you you're burning 2,200 calories, but really that's not the case, right? So you think, hey, I'm in a deficit because I'm burning 2,200 and I'm only eating 2,000, so I should be losing weight. But in all reality, they can be off by, say, 200, 300, 400, 500 calories. So now you're actually only burning 1,900 calories and you're consuming 2,300. Right. So you kind of get discouraged and you feel like it's a waste of time, and then you just kind of go back to your old habits, right? So some of those apps, like I would definitely recommend, if it is something you are very serious about doing, to looking into a very high quality app. Obviously, you're gonna have to pay for that. There is one guy that I do follow that he's created an app, and he is a pretty knowledgeable guy. It's called My Carbon Coach, I believe. I don't know exactly. I can get that info to you, Doug, so you can get that to your people. But sure. It's, as far as I know, it is, it helps track your calories, helps track your energy expenditure. But from my understanding, it is a pretty high quality app, and I definitely think that you always get what you pay for. So spending, if you're really serious about it, spending the money on it is going to be a bit more beneficial than kind of playing with that guesswork with some of those other free apps.
Very true. So I for a few years used Fitbit, and I no longer use Fitbit. but it would take your calories, and it would say, well, you walked this many steps or you ran today, so here you get extra calories to consume. And it's like, well, no, I'm trying to be in a deficit. I don't want,
right.
Don't try to,
don't try to tell me
force feed me.
Have a little more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I get to have pie. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're gonna want it, right?
I know can't have pie.
It told me I can have it, so that means I'm gonna eat it.
Yeah. So Fitbit said, I blame it on Fitbit.
Hey, getcha.
So yeah, so I mean, again, you could always come in and talk to the team there and find out what it works best, and take a ride on the
little turntable. Yeah. I think, but going back to the whole calories thing, I'm not a big advocate of counting calories. It is extremely challenging. It is very tough, and again, it is really hard to sustain. I will address that with someone who has, say, hey, you've done really good and you're now at a plateau, and we really need to fine tune things. So now let's really figure out what your body needs and what your body's burning. So at that point, then we can start to really consider counting calories. But if you're just kind of getting into this and it all seems a little bit daunting, a little bit crazy for you to say, okay, well, now I'm going to try to, cut all my food, weigh all my food, track all my food. Because I know that's just, it's for most people, it's not going to happen. It's asking a lot. So I really don't like to count calories. I like to be mindful of other things before we get into that point. So if you feel like counting calories is just something that sounds a little crazy, a little too far-fetched for you, I always start to just say, what we want to try to do in terms of getting started with things is, I always tell people we want to add things in before we start to take things away, right? Because generally when I tell somebody, okay, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, most times we tend to want those things more, right? That's just kind of our psychology, right? So I always say, hey, we need to add things in first. So what we need to think about doing is adding in more nutrient dense foods. So we need to really focus on trying to get all the different micronutrients in. So our micronutrients are vitamins and minerals compared to our macronutrients, right, which are protein, fats, and carbs. So a lot of times even thinking about the macronutrients is a little bit challenging for people to kind of say, like, I don't even want to worry about those things. So if we can just say, hey, let's try to get our micronutrients in, because all of those are going to help. They're all kind of our precursors and building blocks to all of the other hormones and neurotransmitters in our body, and they help our body process and do all the things, right? So without all those nutrients, then our body can't function that well. So if we can start just let's add in some fruits, let's add in some vegetables, let's add in some legumes, let's add in some probiotic foods, some healthy omega-3s. Those are the things that we want to try to add in before we start to take things away, so that we can start to give our body some of these nutrients that are need, that can start to help to make us feel a little better, because we know when we do start to feel a bit better, we can start to put a little bit more energy into our exercise or into meal prepping or whatever that is, right? So I always like to say, hey, let's start off with getting some really nutrient dense foods. So I'll give my clients a list of the foods that we should kind of be focusing on based off the body systems, and say, hey, you know what? Let's just add these foods in. Let's pick which ones you like, whatever fruits, vegetables, whatever that is. Let's add those in before we start to take things away. Then once we start to add those things in and they're feeling good and we're starting to be a little bit more of that mindful eating kind of mentioned before, then we can say, okay, well, you know what? Let's just reduce that. We don't have to cut it out completely, but let's just eat a little bit less of that, a little bit less frequently, a little bit less of a portion. Right? So those are the kind of ways I like to start with things. And then slowly we build on those little changes. And then over time, right, we have all these little pieces of the puzzle. And then once you can start to implement them in here, then there, then we're starting to build that whole picture of the puzzle, and then we're getting towards our end goal.
That sounds a lot easier than I think.
Oh, yes,
a lot
easier
of us
said than done. Easier said than done, right? For sure.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of times now about hormones, and these shows are dedicated to guys, and I'm sure every one of the guys are like, well, I want better hormones.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe not wanting to get it through synthetic means, because there's side effects with that.
Definitely.
So if someone was trying to boost because that's again part of the engine, part of the whole system that has to burn properly and work together. As
men, right? Our hormone levels are different than women, right? That's one of the things that is very apparent. Obviously, women still have testosterone and we still have estrogen, but our ratios are much, much different. So when you have those optimal ratios of all different hormones, not just the testosterone and estrogen, then we're going to be our best version of ourselves. So in terms of eating, you might see some things out there that are talking about how there's certain foods out there that kind of really kill your testosterone gains, and foods that might boost your testosterone. But from my knowledge, from what I've seen, it's less directly related to the food, and more so related to some of the other health priorities that we can start to implement. But one thing that we do want to be mindful of is our xenoestrogen. So, right, you might have heard that, say men shouldn't be eating soy products because of the phytoestrogens that are within soy, and that is true to a degree, depending on your individual health. If you have low testosterone, or you have, say, ED or something along those lines, then we might want to really, really minimize that and be very mindful of that. But generally, it's not necessarily a huge factor. If we are eating relatively healthy, otherwise we're exercising, we're getting good sleep, getting good stress management, then that really won't affect us too much as long as we're eating it in huge quantities. But the big thing that is that definitely has shown that can affect your hormone levels, whether it's estrogen as a female or testosterone as a male, is your xenoestrogens, which are going to be found in all of like your plastics. So whether you're using plastic containers for food, your plastic water bottles, whatever that is, those plastics can leach and they can have some of those negative effects from the xenoestrogens. They are found in our tap water because of different pesticides and chemical residue from different sprays or whatnot that can get into our water system. So the tap water can have it. Coming from the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, right, we try to promote as much organic foods as you can, because of these facts that some of these fertilizers or sprays, they can contain some of these different chemicals in them, and they can have an effect on your hormones. But really, everything does come down to dose, right? So if you're consuming a lot of things, regular, so you're only using plastic containers, and you're only drinking tap water, and you're only eating conventional foods, and you're consuming some other, say, less healthy things or different, you're exposed to things within your work because you're a farmer and you're spraying stuff and you just get more exposure, then that's where you really want to be mindful of that, because your overall dose from every different angle is going to build up much more. But if you're occasionally having things there and there, it's nothing to worry about really, because the dose is very dependent on those things. So when it comes down to the food overall affecting your testosterone levels, like that's the only thing that I've really been able to find that has shown a definite effect on those hormone levels. So otherwise, other than food, the big thing that really does affect it is our overall sleep and stress. And those are so hand in hand overall, like they're so closely related. So our stress levels, right, they create an increase in cortisol, right? And that is a natural response. That is something that we have to have as a human being. It's just that when that stress goes from acute to those little blips of stress that occasionally happen and then they're quickly subsided, to that chronic stress of we wake up, we're getting on the way to work, that somebody cuts us off, we get a little bit irritated, we get to work and have an 8-hour day of pretty much high stress, we come home and then there's more stress involved because of the family or relationship life. That compounding over the days, over the weeks, over the months, that elevates that cortisol level, and that will directly have an effect on your testosterone level. So they will start to decrease. And then, as most people know that, right, if you're stressed out quite a bit, you're not sleeping well. And that whole sleep cycle is when our body is really changing. Well, not changing, it is really recovering and making those changes that have come throughout the day. So if we are sleeping well, it's going to promote good hormone levels, because that's going to help our overall circadian rhythm, which is just that kind of daylight cycle of how our hormones kind of fluctuate throughout the day. So having a good sleep schedule will really promote a good circadian rhythm. And when that's in tune, our natural hormone levels will also be in tune with that. So that's why we kind of just talk about food itself. I have to talk about food and exercise and sleep and stress. And then if it comes to exercise, exercise does increase testosterone levels. like your heavy intensity exercise, say you're lifting at a 70% of your maximum, and we're lifting pretty intensely to almost within failure, not necessarily going to say, hey, at my 10th rep, I can't move it at all, I need a spot. So we're just stopping if you're short of that. That has shown to increase testosterone for the next 24 to 48 hours. So if you are doing that on a somewhat regular basis, then you will have those little increases of testosterone, but it's not necessarily going to increase it long term once you stop exercising. So it does, like, so exercise is definitely good. It's got a lot of other benefits than just that. But as far as I can see, and what I've learned about is it kind of, it spikes up from that exercise and it kind of drops back down. But if you're in a regular schedule of working out, then you can kind of get that little bit of fluctuation within those testosterone levels, and which will just kind of make you feel better overall. And that not just resistance training, even if you're doing, say, like high intensity interval training, that high intensity capacity output, it has that same kind of stress effect on our body. So that little bit of stress is good. It's just that we can't have too much stress on a very regular interval, and then that's when it starts to really have a negative effect on those testosterone levels.
Cool. All right, good. So I think what we know now is that it's our body is highly complex. Nutrition is highly complex.
Yep.
Exercise and everything else is also intertwined with that. So your best bet is to go talk to Jay. Talk to a nutritionist.
I'll help you out as best as you can,
Exactly. So always enlightening. Great to talk to you as always, Jay. You're a pioneer in what you do out there, and you give constantly. You just unselfishly giving of yourself and your time and of your knowledge. So
I definitely like to teach and share, as much as I can, help people feel better.
It's part of you're a great part of the community, so we really appreciate that. So next week we're going to talk about some more men's health habits and humors, and we'll see where it goes from there. So again, thank you everyone for today coming out and having a talk and learning more, and we will see you the next time on Engagement.